I want you to picture the exact second your phone buzzes with a text from your own mother that just says, "We need to talk, now." That's how this story starts for me. Not with a fight, not with tears, with a single text message that told me my entire life had just been rewritten by someone else, without my permission, while I wasn't looking. My name doesn't matter yet. I'll give you that in a minute. What matters right now is this. 3 hours before that text landed, my fiancé sat across from me at our kitchen table, looked me dead in the eyes, and told me she loved me. Then she opened her phone and she sent 23 screenshots to my mother, my sister, and 4 of my closest friends. Screenshots she edited, screenshots she cropped, screenshots designed to make me look like the villain of my own engagement. She thought she was burying me. She had no idea that for 6 weeks, I had already been building a folder of my own, real messages, real dates, real proof. And the second she pulled that trigger, she didn't destroy me, she detonated her own life. By the end of this story, the woman who tried to humiliate me in front of everyone I love will be the one standing in a room full of people who trusted her, watching every single lie fall apart in real time. And I'm going to tell you exactly how it happened, step by step, because some of you are going to need this playbook one day. I hope you never do, but if you do, you'll be ready. Let's go back to the beginning, because you need to understand who I was before all this, so you understand exactly how far she thought she could push me. Hey, before I go further, let me introduce myself properly. For this story, I'll call myself Mark. Not my real name for obvious reasons, but everything you're about to hear happened. The dates, the messages, the family dinner that turned into a public reckoning, all of it real. If you're new here, this channel is all about real relationship stories, betrayal, revenge, and the moment the truth finally comes out. If that's your kind of story, do me a favor and hit subscribe before this video ends, because I promise you, where this one goes, you will not want to miss the next one. And I'm telling you right now, this gets so much worse before it gets better. What she did with those screenshots was only the opening move. What I found out afterward is going to make your jaw hit the floor. Okay, let's start at the beginning, with the girl I thought I was going to marry. I met Ashley, that's what I'll call her, at a mutual friend's birthday party almost 5 years ago. I was 28, recently out of a relationship that had fizzled out more than blown up, and honestly not looking for anything serious. Then she walked in, wearing this ridiculous, oversized denim jacket, laughing so loud at her own joke that half the room turned to look, and I thought, okay, I need to know that girl. We talked for 4 hours that night, about nothing important. Movies, terrible college roommates, the worst jobs we'd ever had. But there was this ease to it, you know? Like I didn't have to perform. I could just be myself. And she'd laugh at the right parts and challenge me on the parts that needed challenging. 3 weeks later, we were basically inseparable. I want to be honest with you, because this is a story about seeing what's real and what isn't. The first year with Ashley was genuinely good. She was smart, she was funny, she remembered small things I mentioned once in passing and brought them up months later. She'd leave little notes in my gym bag. She learned how to make my grandmother's pasta recipe because I mentioned missing it. For a long time, I thought I'd found the person I was supposed to build a life with. But here's the thing about hindsight. It's brutal. Because now, when I look back at those early years, I can see every single flag I waved off as quirky or just how she is. Flag number 1, Ashley had a habit of losing her phone constantly around me, specifically at moments when a notification popped up. I used to joke that she went through phones like tissues. Looking back, that phone was never lost, it was hidden. Flag number 2, she had a best friend from her old job named Derek. I met him twice, both times at group hangouts, and both times he was a little too familiar with her, an arm around the shoulder that lingered a beat too long, inside jokes I wasn't part of. When I brought it up once, gently, she laughed and said, "Derek's basically gay, babe, don't be weird." He was not, in fact, gay. I want you to remember that name. Derek is going to matter a lot later. Flag number 3, and this one's the big one in hindsight. Ashley was an incredible storyteller. She could take a completely ordinary situation and spin it so that she was always the reasonable one, always the victim of someone else's overreaction. At the time, I thought that was emotional intelligence. Later, I learned it was a skill she'd been sharpening on me the entire time. We got engaged 2 years ago on a trip to the coast that she'd actually planned herself. She just didn't know I'd noticed the ring was missing from my sock drawer for 2 days before that trip. She proposed the idea, I did the asking, and honestly, I was thrilled. My family adored her. My mom used to call her the daughter I never had, which, hold that thought, because that line comes back around in a big way later. About 8 months before everything blew up, something shifted. It was subtle at first. Ashley started reconnecting with old coworkers, including Derek, who'd apparently just gotten out of a relationship and needed emotional support. She started going to more happy hours without me. Her phone, which she used to leave face up on the counter without a thought, was suddenly always face down, always in her hand, always locked the second I walked into a room. I told myself it was nothing, new job stress, wedding planning stress. I told myself a lot of things because it's a lot easier to believe the story you want than the one that's actually in front of you. Then came the night that cracked everything open, the night I wasn't even looking for anything and the truth just fell into my lap anyway. We'd had dinner with friends, and Ashley left her phone on the arm of the couch when she went to grab dessert. It buzzed. I wasn't snooping. I want to be clear about that because it matters for what happens later. I just glanced at the screen the way you glance at any notification that lights up next to you. It was a text from a name saved as Work D. It said, "Can't stop thinking about last night. Tell Mark you're working late Thursday." I sat there holding that phone like it was made of glass, my stomach dropping through the floor, and Ashley walked back in from the kitchen with 2 bowls of ice cream and a smile on her face like nothing in the world was wrong. And that, right there, is where this story really begins. I want you to sit with that moment for a second, because I sat with it for what felt like an hour, but it was probably 4 seconds. Ashley smiling, ice cream melting slightly at the edges, a text message glowing on a screen that told me the last 2 years of my life had a crack running straight through the middle of it. I did the thing you're not supposed to do, which is nothing. I put the phone back exactly where it had been, I took my ice cream, I said thank you, and I smiled back. Because here's what I want you to understand about me. I am not a person who explodes. I'm a person who needs to understand the full shape of something before I react to it. And some small, cold part of my brain, even in that first shocked second, was already telling me, don't tip your hand yet. That night, after Ashley fell asleep, I lay awake replaying the last 8 months on a loop. The hidden phone, the happy hours, the reconnecting with Derek. Every excuse I'd swallowed without chewing suddenly had teeth. The next morning, I did something I'd never done before in my life. I opened my laptop and typed her full name into a search bar, followed by his. Nothing dramatic came up, but I found something almost worse. A public photo from a coworker's Instagram posted 6 weeks earlier of a group at a bar. Ashley was in the photo. So was Derek. His arm was around her waist. She was tagged as attending a girls' night. There were no other girls in that photo. I want to talk about the why for a second, because I know a lot of you are thinking it right now. Why would someone who has everything, who's engaged, who's planning a wedding, risk it for someone like Derek? And honestly, I don't think it was ever really about Derek. I think it was about the attention. Ashley loved being wanted more than she loved being known, and somewhere along the way, Derek became a mirror that told her exactly what she wanted to hear, while I'd become the guy who just loved her, quietly, in the background, the way you love someone you've stopped trying to impress because you think the relationship is safe. It wasn't safe. It never had been. Over the next 2 weeks, I became someone I didn't recognize, a quiet, careful observer of my own relationship. I didn't confront her, I didn't accuse her, I just started paying attention, really paying attention, for the first time in months. And the pieces started clicking into place so fast it was almost dizzying. I noticed she'd started a new workout class on Thursday evenings, the same night as the working late Thursday text. I noticed her location sharing, which she'd turned off because it was draining her battery conveniently 3 days after that ice cream night. I noticed the receipts on our shared credit card for a hotel bar downtown on a night she told me she was at her sister's. I remember sitting in my car in a parking lot, staring at that hotel bar receipt on my phone, just laughing. Not because it was funny, because it was so obvious once I actually looked that I felt like an idiot for not seeing it sooner. $58, 2 cocktails, a shared appetizer, on a night she told me in detail about what her sister cooked for dinner, a dinner that never happened. I called her sister the next day, casually, just to ask about a recipe. Her sister said she hadn't seen Ashley in almost a month. Here's where the manipulation really shows its teeth, because a week after that, Ashley came home and completely unprompted told me I'd been acting distant lately. She sat me down, she held my hands, she said, "Is everything okay with us? You feel far away." I looked at this woman who was at that exact moment in an active affair she thought I knew nothing about, and I watched her flip the entire emotional narrative so that I was the one who might be pulling away, so that if I ever did find out and ever did confront her, she could point back to this conversation and say, "I knew something was wrong, I tried to talk to you about it, you shut me out." She was building her defense before I even knew there was a case.
That's the second moment that still makes me shake my head, if you're keeping count. Because it wasn't just that she was cheating, it's that she was cheating and actively rehearsing the story she'd tell everyone if she ever got caught. And I was standing right there, watching her build it in real time, and she had no idea I could see the blueprints. I told her everything was fine. I told her I loved her. I meant that second part, honestly, even as everything else in me was screaming. And that night, lying next to her, I made the decision that shaped everything that came after. I wasn't going to confront her the moment I found something. I was going to find out everything. Because I already knew, in my gut, exactly what would happen if I went in half-cocked with a suspicious text and a hotel receipt. She was too good at rewriting reality. She'd cry, she'd deny, she'd twist it until I was apologizing to her by the end of the conversation. I'd seen her do it to smaller things, turning a bounced check into my fault for not communicating about the budget, turning a canceled dinner with my parents into me always taking their side. If I came at her with scraps, she'd shred them and hand me back the pieces as an apology I owed her. So I decided I wasn't going to bring her scraps. But what happened next, I never saw coming. Because 2 days later, I found the piece of evidence that turned this from a private heartbreak into something so much bigger than either of us. I was going through our shared cloud photo backup, looking for a picture from a trip for something completely unrelated, and I found a folder Ashley didn't know synced automatically from her phone. Buried in it were screenshots, dozens of them, of conversations between her and Derek going back almost a year. Not 8 months, a year, nearly the entire second half of our engagement. And in one of those messages, dated 4 months before our engagement party, Derek asked her point blank, "Are you seriously going to marry him?" Her response was 3 words long. "For now, yeah." For now. Not "I love him," not "of course." For now. Like I was a placeholder, like the life I thought we were building together was something she was renting, not buying, with an exit clause she'd already drafted in her head. That was the moment this stopped being a story about a broken heart and became a story about what happens when you underestimate the quiet person you think you already own. I didn't cry when I read that message. I wish I could tell you I did because it might have felt more human. Instead, something in me just went very, very still and very, very quiet.
I remember sitting at my desk at 1 a.m. screenshotting my own screenshots, a folder of proof that Ashley didn't know I had, that Ashley didn't even know I knew existed, and thinking one very clear thought. She is going to try to control this story, and I am going to make sure the truth controls it instead. I want to be really clear here because I know some of you are already thinking about the messy, chaotic revenge fantasies. Keying a car, screaming matches, showing up at Derek's job. That was never the plan. Partly because I'm not built that way, and partly because I knew instinctively that the win here wasn't going to come from chaos. It was going to come from control, from patience, from letting the truth do the damage in front of the exact people Ashley had spent years performing for. So here's what I actually did. Step 1. I built an airtight, undeniable record. I downloaded every screenshot from that cloud folder onto a private drive that wasn't linked to any shared account. I dated everything. I cross-referenced the working late nights and girls' nights against the hotel bar receipts, the Thursday workout class, and the messages themselves. By the time I was done, I didn't have suspicions. I had a timeline, a year-long, fully corroborated timeline with financial receipts backing up almost every lie. Step 2. I brought in one person I trusted completely, my sister, who I'll call Jenna. I want to talk about this for a second because doing this alone would have broken me. My sister, who I'll call Jenna, had actually voiced quiet concerns about Ashley almost a year earlier. Nothing dramatic, just a comment here and there about how Ashley always needed to be the center of attention at family things. I hadn't wanted to hear it then. Now I needed her. I sat Jenna down, showed her the folder, and watched her face go through about 4 different emotions in under a minute. Shock, fury, then, and this surprised me, a kind of grim, focused calm that mirrored exactly what I was feeling. She asked me one question that I think about a lot even now. What do you actually want out of this? Do you want her to hurt, or do you want the truth to be known? And I realized those weren't the same thing. I didn't need to orchestrate Ashley's pain. I just needed the truth to exist in the open, undeniably in front of the people she'd been performing for. If the truth hurt her, and it would, that would be a consequence of her own choices, not something I had to manufacture. Step 3. I didn't confront her. I let her keep talking. This was the hardest part, honestly. For the next 3 weeks, I lived a strange double life, going to dinner with Ashley, hearing her talk about wedding seating charts, nodding along, while carrying around a private drive full of proof that our wedding might never actually happen. Every "I love you" landed differently now. Some nights it made me furious. Some nights, if I'm honest, it still made something in my chest ache, because I did love the person I thought she was. But I kept my composure because I needed her to keep believing she was in control. Every extra week she thought she was getting away with it was another week of evidence I could quietly gather. More messages, more receipts, more corroboration. Step 4. I looped in one more ally, a close friend of Ashley's family, someone with genuine credibility who I knew would never lie for her if shown real proof. I'll call her Maureen. Maureen had known Ashley since childhood, and more importantly, Ashley's mother trusted Maureen's judgment completely. I met with Maureen privately, showed her a redacted portion of the timeline, enough to establish the pattern, not so much that it felt like a smear campaign, and asked her one simple thing. If this ever came out publicly, would she be willing to confirm to Ashley's mother that she'd seen it too, so I wasn't the only voice in the room? Maureen went quiet for a long moment, then said, "I always wondered why she got so weird whenever Derek's name came up." She agreed. Now, here's the part where things almost went sideways, because plans like this always have a moment where they nearly collapse. 4 days before our engagement party, the party where Ashley's entire extended family, my entire family, and about 60 guests were going to celebrate our upcoming wedding, Ashley found a text on my phone, not evidence of my plan, just an innocuous text from Jenna that said, "Are you sure about doing this at the party? Maybe do it privately first." Ashley read it out of context and panicked, convinced I was planning something. But instead of asking me directly, she did what she always did. She got ahead of the story. That's when she made her move, the move you heard about at the very beginning of this video. 3 nights before the party, Ashley took a handful of real texts, mostly me venting to Jenna weeks earlier about feeling insecure and disconnected in the relationship, texts sent long before I found anything, and she cropped them, removed all context, and sent them to my mother, my sister, and 4 of our closest friends, framing them to make it look like I was the one who'd been unstable, paranoid, and secretly resentful, possibly even cheating myself, looking for a way out of the relationship. She was trying to poison the well before I could pour anything into it. But what happened next? I never saw coming, because that single move became the exact reason everyone believed me 20 minutes later, without a single doubt in their minds. My mother called me the second those screenshots landed in her inbox. Her voice was shaking, not with anger at me, but with confusion, because the mark in those cropped texts didn't sound anything like the son she'd known for 30 years. I didn't panic. Honestly, some small, cold part of me had been braced for exactly this kind of move from Ashley for weeks, because I knew how she operated. I told my mother, calmly, "I need you to trust me for one more day. Please don't respond to her yet. I promise everything will make sense very soon." That was the hardest ask of my life, asking my own mother to sit in confusion and worry for a single day without explaining why. But I needed the timing to be right. I needed this to happen at the party, in front of everyone Ashley had spent years curating an image for, not in a scattered series of private phone calls where she could spin each conversation differently. The night of the engagement party arrived. 60-some guests, string lights, a 3-tier cake with our names on it, Ashley in a beautiful pale green dress, glowing, greeting relatives, playing the perfect bride-to-be, the same performance she'd been giving for years. I want you to imagine the tension in my body in that moment, because I knew what was coming in about 20 minutes, and she had absolutely no idea. Midway through the toasts, my mother stood up, because I'd asked her to, gently, in advance, without telling her exactly what would follow, and said she wanted to share something meaningful about how much Ashley had come to mean to this family. It was the perfect, unsuspicious lead-in. That's when I stood up beside her, thanked everyone for coming, and said I wanted to share something too, a small surprise for Ashley, since she loved surprises so much. I connected my phone to the small projector we'd set up earlier that day, ostensibly for a slideshow of our journey together, which is genuinely what everyone, including Ashley, believed it was for. The first few photos were real, us at the beach, us at a friend's wedding, genuine, happy memories, because I wanted the room settled and warm before what came next. Then the screen changed. The next image was the "for now, yeah" text, dated and timestamped, blown up large enough for the whole room to read clearly. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I said, calmly, into a room that had gone dead silent, "I found out a few weeks ago that Ashley's been in a relationship with someone named Derek for almost a year. I have the receipts, literally. Hotel bar tabs on nights she told us she was at her sister's, who confirms she wasn't there. I have the messages. I have the dates. I'm not sharing this to embarrass anyone. I'm sharing it because 3 nights ago, Ashley sent doctored, cropped versions of my private texts to my mother and my closest friends, trying to convince all of you that I was the unstable one, so that if this ever came out, nobody would believe me." I looked directly at my mother. Mom, I'm sorry I asked you to wait. I needed you to hear the whole truth at once, not in pieces she could spin. I want you to picture Ashley's face in that exact moment, because I will never forget it as long as I live. It went through shock, then a flash of fury directed at me, and then, this is the part that still gets me, she turned to the room and tried one more time to spin it. She said, voice cracking theatrically, "This is insane. He's twisting everything. I don't know what he's talking about." And that's when Maureen stood up. Maureen, Ashley's own family friend, the woman Ashley's mother had trusted her entire life, said clearly, "Ashley, I saw the messages myself weeks ago. I told you I always wondered about you and Derek. Don't do this in front of everyone." The room didn't erupt in chaos. It went eerily quiet, in that specific way a room goes quiet when 60 people simultaneously realize they're watching something true unfold. Ashley's own mother, the woman who had told my mother countless times how much she loved having me as a future son-in-law, stood up, walked over to her daughter, and said in a low voice that still somehow carried across the silent room, "Is this true?" Ashley didn't answer. She just started crying, but not the kind of crying that comes from remorse, the kind that comes from realizing in real time that the story you've been performing for years has run completely out of road. That's the moment I want you to sit with, because everything after this happened fast. Derek, it turned out, had actually been invited to the party as a family friend, a lie Ashley had maintained for months to keep him in her orbit without suspicion. He left within minutes, practically sprinting to his car, while several of Ashley's own cousins loudly speculated in front of everyone exactly who he was. The engagement, obviously, ended that night. But here's the part that's the real payoff, the part that made this whole plan worth every sleepless night of gathering evidence. Ashley had convinced her parents to put down a significant, non-refundable deposit on our wedding venue 3 weeks earlier, money that came out of a joint account I'd also contributed to. Because I had documentation, actual, dated financial records, not just emotional testimony, I was able to work with the venue directly and recover my portion of that deposit within 2 weeks, something Ashley absolutely did not expect, because she assumed the chaos of a public breakup would let her control the financial fallout the same way she'd tried to control the narrative. There's one more twist, and I saved it for last because it still makes me shake my head. About 3 weeks after the party, I found out from Jenna, who'd stayed in the loop with a few mutual friends, that Derek had in fact been doing the exact same thing to Ashley that she'd been doing to me. He'd been seeing someone else the entire time, a coworker at his new job, and had told that coworker he was recently single almost 2 months before the party. Ashley didn't just lose her fiancé and her reputation with her own family that night. She lost the person she'd blown up her entire life for, and found out almost immediately after that he'd been lying to her too, the whole time. I won't pretend I felt nothing hearing that. I felt something, but it wasn't gloating exactly. It was more like watching a house of cards someone else built finally, fully collapse under its own weight, a house I hadn't even had to push. It's been almost a year since that night, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you revenge fixed everything, because it didn't. There were months afterward where I still had to grieve the relationship I thought I had. the version of Ashley I fell in love with at that birthday party 5 years ago, who I now understand may have never fully existed the way I believed she did. But I learned something in the middle of all this that I want to leave you with. The version of me that stayed quiet, that gathered proof instead of exploding, that waited for the truth to speak for itself instead of screaming it into a room, that version of me wasn't weak. That was the strongest thing I've ever done. Ashley tried to hurt me by controlling the story first. What she never understood is that the truth doesn't need to be rushed, it just needs to be complete. And when it finally comes out whole instead of in pieces, it doesn't just clear your name, it ends theirs. So, I want to hear from you. If you'd found those screenshots on that first quiet night with the ice cream, what would you have done? Would you have confronted her right then? Or would you have done what I did and waited? Tell me in the comments, honestly, because I still think about that every single day. And if this story kept you watching until the very end, subscribe, because there's another one coming next week, and trust me, it's just as wild as this one. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next story.